Welcome to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. My name is Audrey Monkey, and I am your host. For more than 3 decades, I've been a summer camp director, and I've had the privilege of working with thousands of children, teenagers, young adult counselors, and parents. I really enjoy sharing stories, tips, and ideas to help others who care about young people raise a generation of kind, self-reliant, optimistic kids who become thriving adults. If you're interested in summer camp, parenting, or happiness, you've come to the right place. Do you have an athlete in your house? In this episode of the podcast, episode 44, I'm talking with Kirsten Jones. She is co-host of the Raising Athletes podcast with Susie Walton. And she's a life coach who's worked with many parents and kids, aspiring athletes, and those who just want to learn to be a little more mindful and have an appropriate approach to athletics. I hope you enjoy this episode. Well, I am so excited today to have Kirsten Jones on the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. She is the host of hashtag Raising Athletes, a brand new podcast where she is interviewing some fabulous athletes and coaches and giving advice to parents who are raising athletes. So Kirsten, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So can you just tell us a little bit about your background and how you got interested in just kind of helping parents with raising their own athletes?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. As she said, our podcast is called hashtag Raising Athletes. I'm actually a co-host with Susie Walton, who is a 40-plus year parenting coach who raised 4 boys, one of which is the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. And she and I have been good friends for 10 years, and we were talking about how can we help parents. My background, I played Division I sports. I played volleyball in college and then played overseas and joined Nike in Europe and lived in Europe for 10 years working for Nike, both on the product side, and then I went on to the learning and development side and ran a course called Product Creation University for about 5 years, where we took Nike's leadership through design, development, product marketing, storytelling, and how do you come up with concepts and all of that. And while I was at Nike, I was like, ooh, I love this inspiring and storytelling and mentoring. And so out of that became a life coach. And I've been doing my business for about 4 years, but really have come into my sweet spot in the last year in realizing now I am raising 3 athletes. I've got my oldest is 17. He'll be a senior in the fall. His biggest dream since he was 9 years old was to play basketball in college. And now we're getting close to, getting to the point where that may become a reality. So as I support my 2 sons and daughter in their dreams, and as I work with clients who have kids who are looking to try to play at the next level, or even those who are playing where they are now, whether they're a 13-year-old trying to make the middle school team or a high schooler who doesn't get a ton of playing time, I work with teens and athletes or parents on mindset and mindfulness and visualization and meditation, and how do we bring our vision and our values into action.
So what are you seeing as kind of some of the biggest challenges that parents and kids face when it comes to athletics?
Probably the biggest thing is expectations around, or your own personal expectations, right? When our kids are young and we have blue sky scenario and we're pretty sure at 4 our kid did something really spectacular on the soccer field once and they're going to become the next, David Beckham. And as our kids start to age and as they hit puberty at different ages and as their needs and their likes and their interests change, and then we sometimes as parents have decided for them what we want them to become or who we want them to become, and the things start not aligning, right? Or they don't make the team, or they get put on the B team. And what does that happen? What happens to them and who they become and how they see themselves? And so I really work with people who want to, it's not only about making them a stronger athlete, but more importantly, an extraordinary person, right? So giving them the tools to understand that really it's not about sports, right? It's about how do we show up in life and giving them the tools so that I'm going to tell you this is for for you to make you a better athlete, but really you're going to use it with your teachers. You're going to use it with your friends. You're going to use it with your first job. And if I think of kids as, people as oak trees, and I can put some water on you and tell you you're great. And, that's going to last you for a little while, but really there's a reservoir beneath you. And if I can teach you that the tools within your roots will help you get down into your aqueduct, into that reservoir that you can then feed yourself. So it's really about helping them create the vision and the life of their dreams through mindfulness and meditation and visualization, and helping them understand that really all of the gifts that they have are already inside of them.
Yeah. As you were talking, it just reminded me, when we're training our counselors at camp, we always tell them, so a lot of our counselors, they come to be like a sailing counselor or something like that, or whatever it is. And we always explain to them that everything we do is a means to an end. And when you were talking, I was thinking about that sports, being on a team and working hard at something and, having failures and setbacks and bouncing back, all of those lessons that you learn from a sport can be lifelong, character building, great things, as long as we all keep it in focus that, yes, even if you don't make the team or you don't end up playing in college, if the parents and the kids are viewing it as, but wow, I am learning great teamwork and I have these wonderful memories with my teammates and I got really good at this thing. So I think it's like that perspective thing that and whether it's sports or academics or robotics or whatever, music,
I think whatever, art, yes, whatever your thing is.
Yes. I think oftentimes as parents, we have this thing like we want our kid to be better than we were.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Like we have this dream like, oh my gosh, they're so much more coordinated than I was.
I did this. So just imagine what they can do, right?
Yeah. Or their SAT score is so much higher than mine.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think it's also just that whole separate person thing. I mean, I think like when it's probably, do you still do sports yourself?
Yes, I am still very active. I mean, not competitively, but I love to play. I'm still like, I still can't stand to lose. So it's
right.
That's in you, whether you're playing Monopoly or, tennis or whatever you're participating in. But now you have, as I said, the perspective and the understanding of how to handle it a little bit better, right? And how to, fail gracefully and learn from I was actually golfing with an Olympic volleyball player a year ago, and she's become one of my dear friends, but I was so impressed with her because here she is. I didn't really know her well, and we're out golfing, and here's, she has a bronze medal, and, who am I? And she turns to me and she's like, so which club should I use? Like, so how should I hold the club? So she kept asking for my feedback, and she kept asking, and I was like, I'm not really any better than you are, but that's how she got to be so good, because she had zero ego about asking for help. And so many times we get caught, and as parents, we get caught in our ego about what level my kids should be or how good they are or what team they're on. If they're on this team, then this must mean I'm a good parent. It has nothing to do with your parenting skills, good or better, or for better or worse, right? But when you can raise a kid that's curious, and I love to talk about curiosity, because when they're curious, I wonder what happens. I heard Tiger Woods interviewed a couple weeks ago, and his personal life aside, his success on the golf course, the guy said to him, well, so, when you were at the height of your game and you had won 12 titles, people were talking about how you're never going to be able to sustain that. What did you think about people talking about you like that? And I thought his answer was so brilliant. He said, I've always been really curious. And I was wondering, if I hit this stroke a different way or I struck the ball, he didn't talk about the other people. Mm-hmm. That's never been part of his equation.
Right.
We've always been curious. Mm-hmm. What could I do to get better? Which is why Kirsten asked me, what club should I use to hit this ball better? She's just curious. Right. It's not about, well, I need to, I'm an Olympic athlete. I need to show up a certain way here, or I'm going to look like an idiot. There's no ego. And the same thing with our parenting is, if your kid gets chosen for the B team and they're 10, ask them some good questions. Because a lot of times we decide whether that means success or failure for them. Well, if they're not on the A team right now, then that means that, they're not going to get chosen for that. Like, your parents projecting out their kids' whole life plan based on whether they made the A team at 10, right?
I know. And what about the fact that being on the B team, what if they get to actually play? This is the other thing. Sometimes parents fight so hard or, do all this extra stuff to get their kid on whatever team. And then the kid sits on the bench. And what about when I've heard people that are on these travel teams and they drive hours and hours for their kid to sit on the bench. And I'm sorry, for me, I have too much going on in my life to drive somewhere and not watch my kid play.
Not to mention the financial commitment you've
made.
Oh my
gosh. Yeah. I know. And you know what? And you were talking about that intrinsic thing too. And you can't, the more extrinsic stuff we do for our kids. So as a parent, if you have to make your kid go outside to practice and say, oh, we need to practice some more. Come on, kid, let's go outside. If it's not them wanting to do it, it's just not going to work. It's going to end up being a butting heads, and it's not their intrinsic thing. So I think when kids really love a sport, what I've seen in my own kids, when they really love it, it requires no pressure. No outside. They just want to do it. They want to practice it. I remember one of my daughters, we were just doing a little gymnastics class. You should have seen her practicing handstands. She was 4 years old, and she would just over and over. She's one of those very precise people. Mm-hmm. And over and over and over and over. And I remember thinking, wow, she really likes practicing and trying to perfect her handstand. And it's one of those things that it just comes from in them. You're not going to make your kid do something like that. And gosh, I just think with these sports, parents get a little crazy sometimes because they want what's best. Obviously, we all want what's best for our kids, and we think it's so good to just give them more and more opportunities and time to practice and everything. But is it always so great? What are you seeing in terms of what leads to the best well-being for kids? What is the sweet spot for them sports-wise?
Well, with all of us, right? We all need a break. You need to go hard. You need to train really hard. But, as I tell my 17-year-old who all he wants to do is play basketball 24/7 is your sleeping and your recovery is as important, if not more important, than you when you're in your work mode. I mean, that's great that you're putting in the hours and you're in the gym and all of that needs to happen. But his mental preparation and mental recovery and physical recovery and fueling, right? Nutrition are more important. And I think 80% of the game is the mental game. 20% is the physicality of it. I mean, yes, it helps if you're built like LeBron to get onto the basketball court. And there obviously is a certain element of that. I'm not going to discount that. At the same time, to your point about, there's a great viral video on the internet. This little girl, she couldn't be more than 3 or 4, and she's trying to jump up onto this box. The dad recorded her for 20 minutes. She just kept getting up and kept falling. She couldn't quite land it. She kept she hit her shins. She fell back. But she would not give up until she nailed it. And to have that intrinsic drive around what is it I want to do? And if your kid isn't, to your point, isn't packing, Mason got up and went out the house at 5:15 this morning. I didn't have to set an alarm. I didn't have to do anything. He wants to be at the gym at 5:30 in the morning because that's his dream.
Right.
And if you want to play at the next level, it has to be your dream. It can't be my dream.
Right.
Because it's just not going to be sustainable. Because you are going to hit headwinds. You aren't going to be the fastest or the quickest or the strongest or this. And so when you are, and as he was riding the bench last year for a while, what are you going to do? How are you going to fix this? Well, what could I do? And we brainstorm. Oh, I'll go talk to the coach. Oh, I'll go ask the assistant. What are the extra, what conditioning do I need to do? What mental preparation do I need to be doing? He started his own ritual on his own, but the night before he would lay down and visualize the entire game the next night before he went to bed. And I said, that's the best thing you can possibly do. I work with my clients on that too, is we don't believe how much whatever we're putting into our brain dictates the outcome. What we focus on expands. And one of the clients I'm working with right now, his dream is to play college baseball. And I said, your homework is to lay there and be in Dodger Stadium playing a no-hitter, pitching a no-hitter you visualizing that, your brain doesn't know the difference between you thinking you've done it and you actually doing it. So when you go to that training camp this summer and you show up on the mound and you throw a no-hitter, your brain's like, yeah, I've done that before. Because the guy that walks out onto the mound that's thrown 25 no-hitters in a row every night before he goes to bed is a different guy than walks out going, oh, I hope I don't like mess up and I don't want to look like an idiot. And the self-talk that we're doing is so powerful in what we're actually creating in our lives.
Right. So it's so great. I'm sure when you're meeting with these kids, you're helping them beyond their sports, because this is also for other areas, whether it's social things or new experiences or anything that's just so helpful to kind of be more positive in the way you talk to yourself. I always think about that. Like if you only talk to yourself like you were talking to a friend, you know, we'd be so much more encouraging and forgiving about our downfalls or whatever. So what a great tool to give kids. Okay. So I have a question I want to ask you. So one of the things that I've heard come up just among parents is just, you know, the kid gets to a point where they have either a coach or a team and they don't want to do it anymore. What do you, like when you're working with parents, how do you have them navigate that? Because obviously, like, you know, you'll get a teacher or a coach you don't like. That's part of life. It's like bosses or whatever. So I know there's some balance to that you have to deal with sometimes difficult people. But at what point, or how do you advise parents and kids when they maybe are feeling like they don't want to continue?
So I guess I would first know what age is it, you know, if for the younger kids, you know, if it's not the right fit, it's not the right fit. Go find, there's 1,000 teams out there, go find a new team. As they get a little bit older, and if the kid really wants to be at that high school and the coach isn't a great fit, that's when the, you know, like the friction starts to kick in and you're like, you have to look at, again, beyond your sport and what are your goals? What are your kids' goals for the long run, not for just this season? And then ask him, her to define, why am I doing this? What's in it for me? And what do I want to get out of it? And maybe it's a paradigm shift as to, because P.S., we get to pick one person in our life, our spouse. Everybody else is given to us. Everybody else, your parents, your siblings, your bosses. Most of the time, you just get the boss, and you're going to work for a lot of bosses you don't like. You're going to have teachers you don't like. You're going to have coaches you don't like. So every coach has a gift to give you. Every teacher has a gift. Every relationship has a gift. Maybe it's not the one you wanted, right?
Resilience, it might be.
But usually... Right. The best gifts come from those, because that becomes a pivotal moment. Either you decide, wow, I really want this. What can I learn from this person in this situation that's going to help me be better at what I want? Or it's one of those times where they say, you know what? I realized, you know, for my 13-year-old, when he decided to not play, you know, he stopped playing soccer because it was such a hurtful situation. That's also a lesson, right? So now the next time you're going to go interview a coach, you're going to say, what are my non-negotiables and who I want in a coach? And P.S., it's not the parent, it's the kid asking this. You're helping them determine, because as they then look for their next coach or their next boss, you know, when you go, I always tell kids, like, if you're at the level where you're going to go play in college, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. I mean, we get so excited. I know, like, my oldest is like, I just want to be offered. I don't even care where it is. I just want to be offered. And I get that, but that's recipe for disaster, because, you know, he could say, great, I'm an axe murderer on the side. So would you like to play for me? And kids are like, yes. And you get in there and you're like, you're miserable. He makes us run the whole time. The leader, he's mean, he's antagonistic, you know, and I've got tons of stories of that happening. So as you go in, I actually have a tool on my website, you can free download, where it's, you know, 100 questions to ask a coach when you're going in to meet them. And then I got 20 questions on there. I've interviewed a bunch of Division I coaches. Like, what do you want to ask them? What should they be prepared to answer? Because as we ask better questions, we get better answers. And then you have hopefully the opportunity to find a really good fit. Right. So that you're not calling me in 3 years and saying, oh, my kid's miserable, he needs to transfer.
Yeah.
Which happens a lot.
Right. Oh gosh, that's so great. Okay, wait. So tell me about, because I feel like talking to you, if I was a parent of an athlete, I'd want to come to you for coaching. So what's your website and where do people find you if they want to talk to you or their child wants to talk to you about coaching or, like life coaching / athletic?
Yeah. KirstenJonesInc.com is my website. And you can find the podcast Raising Athletes is on there, which you can download. And then I've got some resources on there too, like this tool of how do you ask parents? There's also a wheel. I've got a balance wheel on there. So even just helping kids figure out what their strengths are. Because once we figure that out, if in fact, to your point, if the kids love a water polo is a 2, okay, great. Let's figure out what their other loves are so we can start. It's a research project. What are some other things we can do this summer? That's what I went and spoke at a school last weekend. I said, I give you a challenge. Go pick one thing that you're curious about this summer, whether it's an art class or a camp or if you want to do something on the internet, fine. Create a YouTube channel, but be in creation mode because we're better when we're creating. When we are sitting back and just like taking things in and letting life go by, that's when depression and low self-esteem and lack of confidence that just wipes us all out, right? But when you are creating something, when you're writing or drawing or, making a video and you have to edit it and you have to put in the music and, that's, I think, our kids' version of going out into the woods and making forts, because they don't have access to that all the time. Right. But be creative, be curious.
Oh my gosh, that is such good advice. I think we're going to end it there. I'm going to definitely put notes on on the page or the show notes for this podcast. I'm going to put links to all the things you mentioned so that you can find you, find your podcast. And I was just so inspired when you were talking. Parents need to do the same thing. So if I was going to say during the summer, we want our kids to get into that creative mode and find hobbies. And I would suggest that one of the best ways we can help our kids do that is by doing it ourselves. I know you and I, we've talked, we're doing things we really enjoy, even just doing this podcast and kind of pursuing some of our own things that we're curious about and wanting to create. And I think that parents who have these really, whether it's a great athlete or showing them what a flourishing adult is more important than being so focused that like your whole life is your kid.
Yes.
I think one of the things that model for your kid that first of all, their sport isn't your whole life.
Yes.
Because I think I see some sport. I remember that that gymnast. And I know, of course, she was an Olympian, but did you watch the video of her parents in the stands?
No.
They were like moving with her. And I know, I'm sure I would have been the same way, but I was like, oh my gosh, it's like this symbiote, like they have been so focused on this gymnastics. They're practically on the mat with her right now. Yeah. And I know that it can be so consuming, but gosh, your advice is just wonderful. So thank you so much for being.
So can I say one last thing? So yes, to drive that point home, our mutual friend, Jess Leahy, and I love her question she gets. People are like, yeah, but I get what you're saying about reading and doing other things, but my kid just doesn't want to read it. It's video games. And she says, so do you read books? Like, no. The best way you can show your kid to help them become a reader is to read, right? And show them that you're reading. So to your point about modeling it, what are the things that you're doing? What are you, and P.S. failing at? Like, I'm talking about, oh gosh, the recording on my podcast didn't go well today, or I sent it out to the wrong list, and share those failures with your kids so that they can be like, oh, mom doesn't have it all figured out, but she's willing to stand up there and fail. Like if we can model that it's not all a bed of roses, then they're more willing to take the risk themselves too.
Oh my gosh, so true. This has been awesome. Thank you so much for being on. I know parents will learn a lot from you and for sure want to look at all the great things that you're doing. So thanks so much, Kirsten Jones.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. This is fun.
I'm so happy to be connected with Kirsten Jones and have really enjoyed getting to know her and learning about the excellent work that she is doing. If you'd like to read notes and get links for this episode of the podcast, visit my website at sunshine-parenting.com and search for episode 44. I'd really appreciate it if you like the Sunshine Parenting Podcast, if you would take a moment to write me a review or give me a rating on iTunes. That would be awesome. I'm going to leave you with a quote from Kirsten Jones from one of her blog posts. If he is up at 6 a.m., bag packed, itching to get to the soccer field and dying to try out the new move he learned in the backyard last night with his friends, this is a sign of an internally motivated kid and one who, even if he doesn't make the top team this season, will have the opportunity down the line.
This podcast is a proud member of Parents on Demand, a network of high-quality shows for families just like yours. Download our free network app on Apple and Android and listen to your favorite episodes on the go.